faithfully conveying value by exploring great books worldwide.
Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk.
Today, we're interpreting the book called Tides of Change. Go. The subtitle is Customs and the Global Origins of Chinese Modernity. Its author is Professor Fong Duan, a modern Chinese history scholar at the Cambridge East Asia Institute. In modern Chinese history, customs was a unique entity, nominally under China's government, obeying its laws, with staff as public servants. But actually, from 1860 to 1949, foreigners controlled customs affairs. From big things like tariff collection to small ones like job appointments, leaving China with little say. Gah! And not. From this angle, customs in modern China was like a state within a state, mouthing obedience but acting alone behind the scenes, creating a dual perception among Chinese people. I felt. On one hand, in the corrupt late Qing and Republic eras, British-run customs showed rare integrity and efficiency, seen as a breath of fresh air. On the other hand, losing customs autonomy symbolized modern China's foreign humiliation, constantly grating on people's nerves. Since the late Qing, thoughtful folks have called to reclaim customs autonomy. So, what role did customs play in modern Chinese history? And what impact did it have on China's modernization? To answer these, British historian Bond Wan studied heaps of archives for years, writing Tides of Change to meticulously restore this unique institution's history with rich sources. I'll cover the book in 4 parts. Part 1, How British Control of China's Customs Began. Part 2, Based on Customs, How it won support from both China and foreign powers. Part 3, Involvement, How Customs Got Tangled in China's internal and foreign affairs. Part 4, Impact, What modern elements did customs bring to traditional China? All right, now Part 1, How British control over China's customs came about. Early in the Qing Dynasty, to guard against the Zheng regime holding Taiwan, the Qing government imposed a maritime ban. In 1783, the year after Qing reclaimed Taiwan and ended the threat, Emperor Kangxi lifted the maritime ban and set up 4 major customs in Fujian, Guangdong, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang for trade. Administratively, these customs acted as tax agencies under the Ministry of Revenue, with tariffs sent to the Ministry for the Treasury. In 1757, Emperor Qianlong closed the customs in Fujian, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang, keeping only the Guangdong customs to trade with Western merchants. This situation lasted until the First Opium War broke out. After losing the war, the Qing government was forced to sign the Treaty of Nanjing with Britain in 1842, agreeing to open 5 ports: Guangzhou, Fuzhou, Xiamen, Ningbo, and Shanghai, allowing Brits to live and trade, known as the 5 Ports Trade. The customs at these ports still belonged to the Ministry of Revenue, supervised by commissioners appointed by the Qing government, with tariffs paid into the treasury. Naturally, the British colonists weren't happy and kept wanting to grab control of the customs. Soon, an opportunity came. In September 1853, the Small Sword Society uprising happened in Shanghai. The county seat was captured, but the rebels didn't enter the foreign concessions and said they wouldn't harm foreigners. However, the rebels attacked the Shanghai customs, seized 2 million taels of silver as funds, forcing the customs to shut down. And this caused strong discontent in the concessions. These foreigners figured the Small Sword uprising was China's civil war. They didn't want to get involved, but the customs closure messed up trade. Foreign merchants suffered. Cutting off our income was just unacceptable. So, the consuls of Britain, America, and France in Shanghai teamed up, claiming to protect their interests, formed a tax administration committee, and took over the Shanghai customs. Then, the consuls pressured local Qing officials to accept the done deal. From then on, control of the Shanghai customs fell to Westerners, and this was just the start. In 1860, the Second Opium War entered its 4th year. The Anglo-French forces marched north, Captured Beijing, Emperor Xianfeng fled, leaving Prince Gong to focus on negotiations. British reps seized the chance to propose that all customs should copy the Shanghai model and be taken over by Westerners. Facing powerful foes, the Qing government had to agree. But please, but handing over customs control also let the Qing government weaken local power. The Qing government was stuck between external threats like the Anglo-French forces and internal ones, like the long-running Taiping Rebellion. To crush the rebellion, it had to give power to local governors, letting them recruit armies and keep taxes meant for the court as military funds. So local forces grew stronger, creating a risk of ignoring central orders. If local governors controlled their customs, it'd be like adding wings to a tiger. The court would be harder to manage. Better to just give the customs to the British.
So we witnessed this bizarre spectacle.
During negotiations, Qing representatives agonized endlessly over allowing foreign envoys in Beijing to meet the emperor. Yet, when it came to handing over customs control, they agreed quite readily, with just one condition. Administratively, customs must still belong to the Qing government. The fact, to achieve this, the Qing established the Inspectorate General of Customs to centrally manage all national customs. Its head, the Inspector General, would be British, managing all customs while technically subordinate to the Zhongli Yamen, which held appointment power. In effect, the Zhongli Yamen outsourced customs operations to a British executive team. This arrangement saved King face while giving Britain real benefits, seemingly perfect, but planted flaws that toppled the first Inspector General, Horatio Lay. How did that happen? That brings us to part 2. The issue of customs footing. I'll start with Lay's downfall to explain how modern customs stabilized between the Qing and Western powers. Lay's competence was undeniable, but he epitomized British officials of his era. He believed Britain's advanced tech and civilization represented human progress, while China was barbarically backward, making it Britain's duty to guide its modernization. Well, this mindset made him perpetually condescending toward Qing officials. Now,
Though Prince Gong was his superior, Lei declared himself the prince's equal friend and advisor, deserving royal treatment.
he demanded personal attendance and sedan chairs for travel.
He even proposed building himself a prince's mansion.
Prince Gong laughed off these demands, but others crossed the line. Lei proposed creating a Western-style fleet funded by customs tariffs. Having witnessed foreign firepower, Prince Gong agreed and commissioned him to buy warships. Had this succeeded, Lei's position would have solidified, but he made a fatal error. Convinced the Qing was too corrupt to manage a modern fleet, he planned to control it himself. The only solution was to hand command of this new fleet to the Inspector General, meaning himself. But military power was the dynasty's most guarded authority, never to be relinquished. So Prince Gong flatly refused. Lei then claimed health issues and returned to England. He thought threatening Prince Gong would make him yield. In spring 1861, Lei departed for home. Before leaving, he recommended Robert Hart as acting Inspector General. Lei planned to remotely control operations while Hart executed orders. But Hart, though only 26, refused to be a puppet. He aimed for his own future. Right after Lei left, Hart visited Prince Gong to report a trip that reshaped both his destiny and China's customs. Hart made a deep impression on Prince Gong.
He presented 7 memorandums covering customs procedures, taxation rules, and anti-smuggling measures.
These were duties Lei neglected. Hart also offered to procure Western firearms without demanding command. This convinced Prince Gong that Hart was pragmatic, not power-hungry. Hart's humility won Qing officials' favor. Unlike Lei's arrogance, he respected Chinese input. Delighted, Prince Gong doubled his salary immediately. Thus, Hart forged strong ties with the Qing government. Lei, still in England, was sidelined until November 1863, when Prince Gong fired him and appointed Hart as Inspector General. Hart held this post for half a century, until retirement, later even receiving the honorary title of Taizi Taibao from the Qing. He became history's most adept foreign official in China. So how did this political survivor succeed? The secret was simple: secure joint support from China and Western powers. First, China's backing. Lei's downfall taught Hart that customs was fundamentally a Qing administrative body answering to the Zhongli Yamen. Upon appointment, Hart relocated the inspectorate headquarters from Shanghai to Beijing, operating under the Yamen's direct oversight. He instructed staff that as Qing hired civil servants, they must observe protocol and never offend officials, thus preserving dignity. In customs operations, Hart also made moves, most importantly, reducing Westerners' extraterritorial rights. Under the Treaty of Nanjing, Brits weren't subject to Qing laws. Commercial disputes or crimes went to British courts. This privilege later extended to all Westerners, creating extraterritoriality. But Hart spotted a problem. If foreign customs staff broke laws or merchants smuggled, extraterritoriality meant he as a Qing official had no jurisdiction. That way, Hart couldn't punish subordinates or crooked merchants. Wouldn't that make his inspector general role just a figurehead? So Hart proposed foreign customs staff forfeit extraterritoriality, their crimes to be punished by the inspector general.
Customs also gained authority to crack down on smuggling foreigners, objectively weakening Western extraterritoriality.
The Qing government was quite pleased. Now, how did Hart gain support from foreign powers? As a Brit with Brits dominating key posts, the British government usually backed China's customs. But Hart knew France, Germany, the US, and others had interests in China. Customs needed their support to function smoothly. The best solution was involving all powers in managing China's customs. To achieve this, Hart established a principle: customs staffing should downplay British dominance and maximize internationalization, meaning China's customs recruited globally. An 1873 foreign staff roster showed 57 Brits, 14 Frenchmen, 11 Germans, and 6 Americans. There were also 1 or 2 Norwegians and Swiss. Brits dominated numerically, but not excessively. Later, as Japan expanded, Japanese employees increased, with some rising to commissioner positions, but successive inspectors general still maintained customs international character. Outwardly, modern China's customs resembled a mini UN, making powers feel it served all their interests, not just one nation's. Thus, Hart navigated between the Qing government and Western powers, striving to maintain balance. He knew clearly that only with joint support could customs operate smoothly and his position remain secure. This also constrained Hart's power to some extent. So, one telling incident: after 40-plus years as Inspector General, Hart considered successors, but his pick was rejected by Britain's Foreign Office, while their choice displeased the Qing. Eventually, Hart selected a candidate acceptable to both. This shows how customs affairs involved multiple foreign interests, making both Qing and Western powers highly attentive. Conversely, this positioned the Inspector General as mediator, facilitating negotiations and entangling him deeply in China's domestic and foreign affairs. This leads to Part 3, Involvement, covering customs, deep engagement in 3 events and challenges from 2 forces. First event: customs guaranteed Qing's indemnity payment to Japan and Laodong Peninsula redemption. In 1894, the First Sino-Japanese War erupted, ending in China's devastating defeat. Per the Treaty of Shimonoseki, China owed Japan 230 million taels of silver. The Qing treasury's annual revenue was just 88 million taels, utterly insufficient.
Delayed payments would incur 5% annual interest from Japan.
At the critical moment, Britain's HSBC and Germany's Deutsche Asiatische Bank jointly loaned the Qing 16 million pounds.
This assistance came through Hart's push. He warned Britain, without loans, the Qing would turn to Russia, who'd expand in the Far East and threaten British interests. Upon hearing this, Britain quickly partnered with Germany to bail out the Qing. Second event: Customs facilitated the Boxer Indemnity Agreement. In 1900, the Eight-Nation Alliance invaded China, captured Beijing, forcing the Qing to accept harsh armistice terms.
Over 39 years, China had to repay over 980,000 taels of silver with interest.
The Qing declared inability to pay, deadlocking negotiations.
Art then calculated. Annual payments of 25 million taels nearly matched customs' yearly tariff revenue.
Thus, Hart proposed securing loans with tariffs, supplemented by salt taxes if needed, with customs managing stable collection. The customs being run by the British reassured the foreign powers. In 1901, the Qing government signed the Boxer Protocol with the foreign powers. The indemnity amount and payment method were both proposed by Hart, which is how the Boxer Indemnity came about. The treaty also stipulated that China's customs management system could not be changed until all foreign debts were repaid. So, through the use of the Boxer Indemnity, the nature of China's customs changed. Previously, it was purely a revenue collection agency. Now, it became the general agent for the foreign powers' claims against China. This deeply entangled the customs and China's internal and foreign affairs. Hart was aware of the risks, so he deliberately kept a low profile to avoid drawing attention. However, with Hart's death and the development of China's situation, things began to change. This is the third event involving the customs. Participation in the Xinhai Revolution and the post-revolution aftermath, which deeply influenced China's political direction. Shortly after Hart's death, the Xinhai Revolution erupted, with responses across the country, plunging the Qing Dynasty into turmoil in an instant. To deal with the sudden upheaval, Francis Aglin, who succeeded as Inspector General, took a series of measures, first by seizing control of the tariffs. Originally, customs tariffs had to be given to the Ministry of Revenue first, which then allocated them uniformly. The Inspector General could not directly access them. After the Xinhai Revolution, provinces declared independence, one after another, and stopped paying taxes to the Qing government, giving Aglin an excuse to refuse continuing to hand over the tariffs.
Of course, he wouldn't hand it over to the revolutionaries either. Instead, he deposited the tariffs into various foreign banks.
Aglin's justification was that the tariffs were collateral for the Qing government's foreign debts, and he was safeguarding the creditors' rights, which naturally gained the support of the foreign powers, and there was any necessary in line with the left. Next, Aglin engaged in political speculation. He judged that Yuan Shikai's Beiyang clique was most likely to dominate China, so he directed the British HSBC to loan money to Yuan Shikai. After the Beiyang government was established, Aglin facilitated the formation of a four-nation banking consortium, Britain, France, Russia, and Germany, to loan China £25 million, historically known as the Reorganization Loan. The Beiyang government used this money to repay debts, purchase military equipment, and cover expenses. After the outbreak of World War I, European countries were preoccupied and had no money to lend to the Beiyang government, which lost access to foreign loans. Yuan Shikai turned to raising funds by issuing domestic bonds, with the tariffs still serving as collateral. For this purpose, Yuan Shikai established the Domestic Bond Bureau and appointed Aglin as vice chairman, responsible for managing the account's income and expenditure. Through these three events, the Inspector General gradually stepped from behind the scenes into the spotlight. In public view, he was seen as imperialism's vanguard for economic aggression against China, facing increasing criticism. Maintaining a low profile became impossible. Customs now faced direct challenges from two forces. The first force was rising Chinese nationalist sentiment. Chinese resentment toward foreign control of customs had long simmered. In the late 19th century, customs had 4,343 staff, 3,574 Chinese, over 60%, and,
Yet all senior positions went to Westerners, with Chinese in mid-level roles paid less than Western counterparts. Late Qing thinker Zhang Guanyin condemned this as sovereignty violation and blatant racial discrimination. Oh,
He called for reclaiming tariff autonomy to protect China's interests, a view endorsed by elites like Liang Chao and Sun Yat-sen. Thus, tariff autonomy became central to nationalist demands. This demand surfaced at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference and 1925 May 30th movement.
the Nanjing government, established in 1927, also prioritized tariff autonomy.
Facing surging nationalist consciousness, the defiant Aglan was ousted. His successor, Frederick Mays, assessed the situation and chose compromise through conciliatory gestures. Unlike Aglan's pro-Beiyang stance, Mays showed unprecedented deference to the nationalist government. At his inauguration, Mays swore allegiance in Chinese, a first, and bowed 3 times to Sun Yat-sen's portrait and the national flag. Mays demonstrated loyalty through concrete actions. When the government ordered moving domestic bond funds from foreign to Chinese banks, previously refused, Mays complied and pledged to gradually replace foreigners with Chinese in senior roles. Mays's concessions gave the nationalist government an out. They recognized that, with their own strength, they couldn't force foreign powers to surrender tariff control. Full tariff autonomy was currently impossible. Since Mays acknowledged and respected the nationalist government's leadership over customs, why shouldn't both sides cooperate? Thus, after a period of uncertainty, customs resumed normal operations.
Customs stability was crucial for the nationalist government.
The government's so-called unification was superficial. Many regions paid lip service to central authority but operated independently, ignoring decrees and withholding taxes. This left its finances fragile, making customs tariffs invaluable. At its peak, tariffs constituted over half the government's revenue. It's no exaggeration to say they depended on tariffs to survive. Mays maintained relatively harmonious relations with the nationalist government, serving as Inspector General for 16 years, second only to Hart in tenure. However, in the latter half of his term, Mays faced formidable challenges from another force, Japan.
In the 1930s, Japan accelerated its expansion.
In 1931, Japan's Kwantung Army staged the September 18th incident, occupying northeast China. Subsequently, the Japanese-backed puppet state Manchukuo seized control of northeast China's customs. Mays had no choice but to withdraw foreign staff from the region. China's customs integrity was breached, just the first step in Japan's expansion within China.
In 1937, full-scale war broke out. Within a year, ports from Tianjin and Qingdao in the north to Guangzhou and Hainan in the south fell.
All coastal ports were lost. Only Shanghai and Hankou customs and concessions remained under Mays, and even they were precarious. Japan blockaded the Yangtze, seized customs vessels, and dumped goods at Japanese-controlled docks, bypassing customs entirely. More critically, Japan forced Mays to deposit customs revenue into the Yokohama Specie Bank. If initially Mays hoped negotiations could sustain customs, by now he realized he'd become a commander without troops. By late 1941, the Pacific War erupted. Japanese forces entered the concessions and finally took over customs. This marked the de facto end of over 80 years of British control over China's customs. After the war, American Lester Knox Little became Inspector General, but times had changed. China's modern customs model couldn't be restored. In 1949, the People's Republic was founded. New authorities took over customs nationwide, opening a new chapter. From 1860 to 1949, foreigners controlled China's customs for nearly 90 years, deeply impacting politics and economy while aiding modernization. And from that purpose, for Part 4's impact, I'll explain modern elements customs injected into traditional China. First, modern science, seen in customs upgrades to port facilities and navigation conditions. Ancient China's maritime trade once thrived, creating international ports like Yangzhou, Quanzhou, and Guangzhou. But by mid-19th century, sailing technology advanced, Steamships replaced sailboats, making old ports and navigation aids obsolete. For example, Shanghai port boomed due to location, but narrow, winding channels full of reefs caused major navigation headaches.
So Inspector General Hart planned lighthouses, buoys, and pilot services to address this.
These are standard today, but were cutting edge then, injecting modern science into traditional China.
Was China really that backward?
Take lighthouses. Bulbs had to withstand storms while maintaining clarity, demanding advanced glasswork. Light must project kilometers without blinding sailors. This required optical principles for rotating lights and mechanical devices. Tower materials and construction involved material science and engineering. Plus, professionals had to maintain lighthouses. Truly, you couldn't build one without modern scientific knowledge. In 1868, Customs established the Marine Department to upgrade port infrastructure and navigation. Within decades, lighthouses dotted China's coast from Liaodong to Hainan, symbols of modern civilization. Now, the second modern factor, advancing China's governmental credit system. Traditional Chinese governments relied on land taxes, commercial duties, and fees, rarely borrowing. The Qing government continued this model, but in late Qing, facing foreign invasions and peasant uprisings, government finances became unsustainable, forcing it to borrow. To secure loans, it had to convince creditors of repayment capability. The reliable approach was providing collateral. If funds ran short, creditors could claim it. So in modern China, what collateral was most trustworthy? Tariffs. Since modern times, China's tariff revenue kept growing, the steadiest income source. Managed by Westerners with efficiency and transparency, it was deemed reliable. Thus, several Qing foreign loans used tariffs as collateral. The Beijing-Zhangjiakou Railway, led by Zhang Tianyou, was built with tariff-backed loans. Later, even domestic bonds used tariffs due to customs oversight. The Chinese government generally honored these bonds, fostering the modern governmental credit system. A prime example, in May 1916, facing fiscal crisis, Yuan Shikai ordered bond payment suspension, but Bank of China and Bank of Communications refused, continuing interest payments.
Backing them was Inspector General Francis Aglin.
Now, the third modern factor from customs, an advanced management system. In late Qing and Republic eras, Chinese bureaucracy was corrupt and inefficient, yet customs stood out for integrity, thanks to its management. Modern China's customs had a pyramidal structure, the Inspector General overseeing all national customs from the top. But with over 100 treaty ports, thousands of staff, and endless tasks, how could one Inspector General manage? The solution lay in rules and regulations. For regulations, the Inspector General managed through local commissioners. Specifically, the Inspector General issued circulars executed by commissioners. Commissioners also filed detailed reports, covering everything from tax summaries to daily expenses, down to stationery purchases like paper and ink. Each customs office had supervisors monitoring trade flows, plus audit commissioners reviewing accounts annually nationwide and reporting upward. So every Inspector General from Hart to Mays knew every detail of customs nationwide, even spotting tiny discrepancies, drastically reducing corruption opportunities. Of course, oversight alone couldn't eradicate corruption. So Hart believed late Qing's rampant corruption stemmed mainly from officials' low salaries, forcing them to seek other means. Thus, modern customs implemented high salary for integrity. Specifically, commissioners earned up to 1,500 taels monthly. Deputies, 600. Assistants, 500.
What did this mean?
A Qing Grand Secretary's salary was 30 taels, just 1/50th of a commissioner's pay. Staff also received performance bonuses based on seniority. Add housing, furniture, child care subsidies, strict oversight paired with generous benefits. This made customs staff largely corruption-free, the cleanest department in modern China. Example, after World War II victory, nationalist agencies returned to Japanese-occupied areas. Military officials seized factories, properties, and cash under repossession pretense. Amid widespread criticism, customs stayed restrained, focusing on restoring operations, earning praise. But post-1949, New China's audit found 1,500 plus customs staff involved in corruption, showing its integrity was relative. After all, in late Qing or Republic's corrupt bureaucracy, which agency could be pure as snow? After the purge, offenders were punished, customs reformed, ending its modern era. China's customs history turned a new page. All right, that wraps up Tides of Change, Customs and the Global Origins of Chinese Modernity. Reading notes are below. See you next time.